Hi everyone, JJ here. Welcome back to the Johnston Lounge. Yes, I've changed the name. I've been flagging it for a week or two and I changed it over the weekend. I think I've got all the assets there, the logos and everything on different platforms. I'll talk a little bit about later why I've changed it. Some people have been asking, people have various views, but let's get to why you're actually here. It's the AI Bubble Watch. Now, I've done a few videos on this already, so it's turning into a bit of a series. The last one did okay on both Spotify and YouTube, so there's a lot to say. People are focusing on this. And if you look at this headline here, so this actually goes back to the beginning of October. People have been speculating and talking about this for quite a while, but back here, it was the Bank of England warns AI stock bubble rivals 2000.com peak. The central bank says market concentration hasn't been this extreme in 50 years. Okay, so this is arguable, and I'm sure you have some opinions on this too. Most people do in these types of situations. And we have this headline from CNBC. This is from the 7th of November, so pretty fresh. AI valuation fears grip global investors as tech bubble concerns grow. So last week in the market, it really got the wobbles for sure. The key points in this article: fears of an artificial intelligence bubble have heightened this week after US technology shares slumped. Now we're going to look at what various people, the big players, have been saying, including, yes, Sam Altman, including Jeff Bezos, including Bill Gates and others too. There's Elon, who hasn't said much about it except for, this utopian future, which I've been reporting on that he keeps going on about. I don't think he said much about there being a bubble at all, which is not surprising because he's been talking the stock up with his to try and get that potential $1 trillion pay package. Now I've seen a lot of headlines saying Elon got $1 trillion. It's not true. He has to reach milestones, of course, and I'm sure a lot of people will point that out if I don't point that out, because there's a lot of videos I've done about Tesla. Anyway, the IMF and the Bank of England have sounded the alarm following the sell off. Some investors see buying opportunities following this week's dip, while others advocate looking beyond US in order to avoid concentration risk in AI related names. So, yes, the sell off, could it be a blip in the market? If we look at the actual dot-com bubble, it did have some sell offs along the way. Things don't go in a straight line. I'm not going to say whether I think that it's bursting or not. I have said that I think there's a bubble, but I said in the last video that things can go on for longer than people think, but I just don't know. And I'm not going to guess how big it's going to grow and when it's going to bust. But we're looking at what other people have said here. As you saw in that last video I did, we had the guy who was involved in the Big Short. Just a little recap. So if you've seen the Big Short movie, and it's good to see again, I've seen it a few times. This is Michael Burry. Christian Bale played him in that, the guy that played the drums in it. And he did have this big bet on the US housing market collapsing, which people thought was pretty insane at the time. But it did pay off eventually. He had to wait. And he's got another big bet on shorting two stocks, Palantir and Nvidia. I'm not going to go through that again. I'll link to the video of that if you haven't seen that already, but just know that that's what's happening as well. So, there's increasing kind of anxiety, I guess, and people have speculated with him. It's funny because he reported on his fund a little bit before he had to, and usually he reports pretty much on the last day that he can. So did he do this to actually try and send the market down? I don't know, but some people are speculating that. And it did go down. That was part of the news last week, right? So we've got this story here too. The AI bubble is bursting. Experts say all kinds of things, of course, about when and where, and a lot of people are wrong. When activity is only slightly disappointing, those large tech companies are being taken to the woodshed. So companies have been reporting, and we'll read about this a little bit. Boom. Is AI hype bubble popping? Some experts say yes. The stock market has seen a rough week with a mass sell off caused in large part by Wall Street recession fears and still high interest rates triggering a sharp downturn. One of the hardest hit areas of the economy was the AI industry, which saw the stock prices of big tech behemoths and major AI players like Microsoft, Google, Nvidia, Meta, and more lurch downward. So we'll see what happens this week. It could be just a blip, just taking a breath and going on up. But I have no idea, and this is not financial advice. The market can do anything. If people knew and could predict the actual market, there'd be a lot more people that are a lot richer. So the headline here, Sam Altman says, yes, AI is in a bubble. So this is actually from mid-August. I've reported on this before. So we're going to look at what various players are saying. It's worth repeating here because one of the videos I just did was Sam Altman crashing out in an interview. He sort of got really defensive about the valuation and the financials of OpenAI, where I think it was 13 billion in revenue, but the valuation is heading up above 500 billion. And thoughts are that if it IPOs at some point, it could be as high as a trillion or more. So that these things sort of don't match up, but he got really defensive about it. So this is where we're at, and this is the kind of things that do happen in bubbles. But what he said back then, just to refresh, as economists speculate whether the stock market is in an AI bubble that could soon burst, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman has just admitted to believing we're in one. Are we in a phase where investors as a whole are overexcited about AI? Altman said during a lengthy interview with The Verge, my opinion is yes. Altman compared the market's reaction to AI to the dot-com bubble in the 90s when the value of internet startups soared before crashing down in 2000. So he said, when bubbles happen, smart people get overexcited about a kernel of truth, Altman said. And that is said to be true by lots of investors, saying that in a bubble, there's always some kernel of truth there and people get overexcited. Even in the tulip bubble, which is cited a lot, the tulip bubble hundreds of years ago, some of those tulips, some of those bulbs, the tulip bulbs were pretty rare. Some of the like mutant, but people got carried away. It can happen with anything. It's happened with technology in particular. We'll get into that, the Gartner hype cycle, which pretty much happens with every new technology, really. And if you don't know that, we'll have a look at that in a second. And so Altman does think there is one, it seems. If you look at most of the bubbles in history, like the tech bubble, there was a real thing. Tech was really important. The internet was really a big deal. People got overexcited. He added that he thinks it's insane that some AI startups with 3 people and an idea are receiving funding at such high valuations. That's not rational behavior, Altman said. So he's not pointing to his own company, of course. He would think that his is fine, right? Someone's going to get burned there, I think, he said. Over the past year, we've seen several AI startups, including Safe Superintelligence, led by OpenAI co founder Ilya Sutskever. So he's talking about potential rivals here leaving OpenAI and starting up. So he's really criticizing that, but in doing so, questioning OpenAI itself. Another one, Thinking Machines, founded by ex-OpenAI Chief Officer Murati, raised billions of dollars. So people who have a track record in the sector, starting their own startups and getting billions of funding. That's what's been going on. And so that's where we're really at. And then we have Jeff Bezos, who obviously has been around for a long time. He went through the dot-com bubble. And famously, through the dot-com bubble, he said he was never really concerned because the value of Amazon actually went down after the dot-com bubble. It went really high, of course, along with so many other companies. But the fundamentals of the business were really good inside. And he knew that, of course. And so, but the market valuation went down. The stock price went down over 90%. I think it was 92, 93%. So it was a complete disaster from that point of view. But it worked out okay, obviously. It just took many years after the bust. So will this AI bubble be the same? Will it go way too high, crash down, and then be okay? So Jeff Bezos says it's good because it will eliminate the weak. So he's talking long term here, and I think Sam Altman probably thinks the same. But his company, a relatively new company, has got to survive it. For companies like Microsoft and Amazon, they've had substantial, huge amounts of revenue coming in from elsewhere. So they're not in such a precarious position as these new AI companies. So many investors and financial experts are concerned that a looming AI bubble could wreak havoc on the economy. But Amazon founder Jeff Bezos can't wait for it to burst. Well, I'm not sure if he'd say that, but during a tech conference in Italy last week, so this was a while ago, Bezos conceded that the AI industry is in a kind of industrial bubble, as CNBC reports. So, an industrial bubble, AI infrastructure they're talking about, what he's talking about, all the data centers, all the money, the billions and billions and billions being pumped into it now to build the infrastructure. And if you think back to the dot-com bubble, it was like that. The infrastructure for the internet, basically, a lot of fiber optic cables were being laid, a huge amount, and it was over capacity. It did get soaked up in the end, but it took years, and there was that bust in the stock market and in the company values, and really hundreds just completely went out of business that really had no revenue, but huge valuations. So are we to that point yet? I'm not sure we're quite there yet, but I don't know. As I said, this could be the end of it. It could just take a short breather and then another big leg up, a blow off top, as some investors are predicting that that's what will happen. And that does tend to be what happens in bubbles. If you look at bubbles in histories, they have this intense blow off top, and then nobody really knows where the top is. There's usually no definitive day where it's like, oh, it's burst. It's just a little bit less than the day before. Maybe it goes up a bit and then a little bit less. It's not as dramatic as straight down, as in crash, 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 but it tends to gain momentum from what I have seen and experienced anyway. Besides companies' valuations becoming disconnected from the fundamentals of a business, Bezos argued that people get very excited, like they are today, about artificial intelligence. But to the fourth richest person in the world, a collapse of the AI industry sector eventually could be a positive development because, in his mind, it could eliminate the weak from the market, which is how capitalism works, right? There's sometimes creative destruction going on in these booms and then busts, and then the strong survive, like Amazon did. I guess that's what he's thinking. The bubbles that are industrial are not nearly as bad, he said. It can even be good because when the dust settles and you see who are the winners, societies benefit from those inventions, he argued. That is what's going to happen here too, he said. This is real. The benefits to society from AI are going to be gigantic, he said. So this is different. The benefits to society and to people like us using AI is different to market valuations, which can go up and down. The market is not really efficient. You could say it is over time, but when it gets way out of whack in a bubble, but development, the AI development can keep going on through this. That's what tends to happen. It's been proven throughout history. So the AI development can continue on. Even if there's a bust, it might slow down, but people like Peter Thiel have also argued that bubbles can be good in that way because so much money gets pumped in for development. I mean, the internet did get built, right, with infrastructure. It just got way ahead of itself, is that's what's happening here. And then we have Bill Gates, who says we're in an AI bubble similar to the dot-com bubble. Bill Gates says we're in the midst of an AI bubble. He says it's probably not like the tulip mania bubble that took place in the Netherlands in the 1630s. It could be like the dot-com bubble, where some companies ended up overvalued. And we go back to that grain of truth, as I said, that Sam Altman said, there's always a grain of truth that AI could change society. It's looking like it could, but that doesn't mean that the market valuations aren't stretched or won't get too stretched. These things can be different. Now, are we in the midst of an AI bubble? Bill Gates thinks so, but the Microsoft co founder said that it's not a product of pure speculation. He pointed to the example of tulip mania during the 1630s in the Netherlands when the price of tulips soared for several years only to suddenly crash. That's not where we are, Gates said. But the billionaire philanthropist does think the current bubble is akin to the dot com bubble of the late 1990s and early aughts. In the end, something very profound is happening, he says. The world is very different, Gates said. Some companies succeeded, but a lot of the companies were kind of Me Too, fell behind, burning capital companies. Well, you can see that a lot of the companies today could be doing the same thing, heading in the same direction. Even OpenAI as itself has been questioned, of course, as I said, with $13 billion of revenue. And Sam Altman says in that interview, "Oh, we've got more than that. It's growing steeply, but just the valuation of over 500 billion, possibly a trillion, with only that much revenue, it doesn't seem to kind of add up." Anyway, it's not investment advice. And we have some other signs. Of course, this is the Financial Times. This article caught my eye. The AI bubble has reached its fried chicken phase. This is nuts. When's the crash? What do they mean by fried chicken phase? So we have three company CEOs here eating fried chicken, and look in the background, the photographers there, the frenzy. And they're really saying that in the article that this could be the peak when we start seeing things like this. But it was quite a while ago where I think I put this in a video. I'm sure I did because I saw it and it was a thing at the time when we had Jensen Wang who was signing a woman's t-shirt, chest of a t-shirt, like a rock star around earnings or some visit that he was making somewhere. And that seemed like, oh, yeah, sort of peak CEO, the hero CEO who can do no wrong in the dot com bubble. That one of those people was the Cisco CEO who could do no wrong. The company could do no wrong. And it was a massive crash. And if you have a look at the stock price of Cisco, it took a long time to come back up again. And they were I was going to say AI infrastructure company, but they were an internet infrastructure company. So this article says whenever a bubble bursts, there are some stories from the peaks that morph into endlessly recounted legends that symbolize how mad people have become. Paragon example of this is pets.com. Yes, that's cited quite a lot. If you don't know what that company is, because it doesn't exist anymore, it crashed and burned. And so in February 2000, it was far from the biggest IPO of the era or the biggest failure. But the fact that it was able even to go public despite the minimus revenues has made it the most popular .com punchline. Then there are things like strippers with multiple ninja loans in 2007. Okay, that was in the Big Short movie. If you haven't seen that, that was one of the examples where they realized they went, on a fact-finding mission down to Florida, see what was going on, into Las Vegas to a convention, and they discovered that there was a big bubble. Big players in there, Michael Burry, but there was others. The Steve Carell character, Steve Eisman, who has his own YouTube channel now. All of those people discovered it before everybody else and put a big short on it, and everybody else couldn't believe that the housing market could really crash that much. But yes, we know that it did. And it states here some of those other bubbles that I won't get into throughout history, but a lot of them have played out in similar ways. And this one too, CoreWeave CEO plays down concerns about AI spending bubble. Well, you kind of expect them to because they're right in the thick of it. So Michael Intrator, well, that sounds like a tech name, doesn't it? Like made up especially for tech, says multi-trillion-dollar investments worthwhile if you're building something that accelerates the economy. So this is the argument, of course. This is what Elon Musk is saying. He's talking about the robots, the AI robots that will be measure in the billions, and he's saying to accelerate the economy so much, and he doesn't know what money would mean at that point, the utopian dreams that he's selling people. But this guy is involved too. CoreWeave chief executive Michael Intrator rejected Wall Street's mounting concerns about a bubble in artificial intelligence infrastructure, saying trillions of dollars in investment are sustainable if the result is faster economic growth. If you're building something that accelerates the economy and has a fundamental value to the world will find ways to finance an enormous amount of business. Okay, so that's his argument. That doesn't mean to say that it can't be a roller coaster along the way with booms and busts. And here we get to the Gartner hype cycle. If you're not aware of this, it does play out. New technologies, if you look back in history, so many have played out like this. So we've got this technology trigger where people get excited. And then we have the peak of inflated expectations. So are we there with AI? Are we getting there? You can guess where we are on this cycle here. Or, some people will say, oh, we're past this. We're already on the plateau of productivity. But usually this is how it goes. Technology trigger, peak of inflated expectations, and then a bust, the trough of disillusionment. That's when people go, oh, it's never going to work, it's a bust. But really, the development is still going on, and there's the slope of enlightenment coming out of it. If you think of the dot-com bubble, this is where the big internet companies like Amazon and others that followed, Netflix, Facebook. Facebook happened after the dot-com bubble, and then the plateau of productivity. And then you could be argued that after that happened, quite a long time, then we get this AI surge, the next hype cycle, right? Or there have been lots of mini hype cycles. Crypto was one. I mean, they all happen in a similar way. So don't really have any reason to think that this wouldn't be any different. It's just a question of where we are. Are we way down at the beginning of the technology trigger, halfway up the slope? Are we near the peak? And so we have this too. This is IBM CEO fears about AI bubble are overblown. Let's see what he's got to say about it in this fresh clip just from a couple of days ago.
So this week, there's been some concern in the markets, high valuations, AI bubbles. Do you think that those fears are overblown or justified?
I think that they are overblown. It's not quite a bubble. Could there be overinvestment? Always when there is a new technology, you're going to get a bit of overinvestment. Many will thrive, but some will not. But that's the nature of capitalism, and that's the nature of having a high innovation economy. So with the growth, there will be some pain, but in aggregate, I think that is well justified.
And what about you? What are you seeing? You say fears are overblown. What are you seeing from your corporate customers?
So over the last 9 quarters, we have generated a $9.5 billion book of business on AI. As I look at that, that tells me that our clients are leaning in. Is there any question about the role of AI going forward? No. Is it going slower than people would like? Yes. But I'll assert for every major technology, first 2-3 years seem slower because people are eager to get even more. And in 5 to 10, we are surprised at how much it has impacted us.
Okay, so he's talking about AI in general, not really the market expectation, but you have to keep in mind that CEOs are salespeople. They're really good at sales, so you wouldn't expect them really to say anything else, just like Elon Musk is talking this utopian dream. But what he was saying there about the impact, I think it's also said that people overestimate what the short term, which is what happened in the dot-com bubble. People were talking, I remember, I lived through this. I was a lot younger back then, but I remember people talking about really a Netflix kind of thing that will have web TV. We'll have TV on the internet soon because of this broadband fiber optics. And there was streaming, but a lot of people still had dial-up modems and fairly slow connections. It took quite a long time for that kind of thing to develop and for the business to develop, then Netflix to happen, YouTube. I think it was 2005 really things started there, and there were viral clips and offices going around, I remember at the time. So it really did take quite a while for it to really have a massive impact, but it did, and AI could be the same. Over expectations in the short term, but over the long term, a big impact. And so we have this, as I've got a lot of headlines here, a lot of articles. Bear with me because I find this stuff interesting. I hope you do too. The AI industry is running on FOMO, at least according to Big Tech's latest earning calls. This is from November the 3rd. On AI earnings call, we have Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Meta reported more than 350 billion, that's with a B, this year on capital expenditures or long tail investments in a company's future. All for told investors to expect the number to skyrocket even further next year. Microsoft said higher, Amazon an increase, Google a significant increase, and Meta notably larger. That probably translates to more than 400 billion total for the four companies next year. I mean, these are big, big numbers, right? So this is why Nvidia is doing so well, because the companies are buying the chips from them. You'd have to think that this is cyclical. I mean, this is a cyclical kind of industry, so that will slow down at some point. And could that be the moment that things kind of go south? Or could it be before that? I mean, the stock market is forward looking, so it's anticipation. In terms of bubble, there are a lot of people warning of a bubble, so that in itself tends to, imply that it's not as far advanced, because at the peak of bubbles, most people are saying it's not a bubble. That's what tends to happen. It's like the future, it's all future, it's all amazing, and there aren't many misgivings. Well, that's how it goes. But actually, during the dot-com bubble, there were quite a few people warning of a bubble. It's sort of a little bit of a myth, not quite, but good to keep an eye on retail investors, because retail investors tend to get carried away more than others, perhaps, especially if it's their first time at the rodeo, for instance. Like I was during the dot-com bubble, that was my first time. I didn't kind of realize that it was bubble was as bigger it was. I wasn't really, it was my first experience in the stock market, and it was a good experience looking back on it. If the AI bubble pops, it could now take the entire economy with it. Too big to fail. So in the dot-com bubble, that didn't happen so much. It really didn't affect the wider economy, which was pretty incredible. People were expecting it to, but it kind of didn't. Could this be different because the macro is not looking so good in the US, and it seems like the AI is kind of holding it up. People are joking about that. There's memes going around of AI holding the economy up. All companies are pouring so much money into AI. Experts are starting to warn that it may be propping up the entire US economy. I mean, that's what happened with the global financial crisis, or the great financial crisis with the US, the housing market, and all these interrelated problems with the banks happen, and it did really spread globally. So could this happen like this? It's certainly not only the US, but mainly in the US. So the NVIDIA CEO says China is going to win the AI race. So this feeds into the race, right? And it's in his best interest to say this. He's selling the chips. So he wants a race to happen, because the more people trying to compete for the best AI and building these big AI data centers, the more NVIDIA profits. They've been raking in the money, right? So he wants that to continue. So much for America First. After 3 months of touting a future in which US tech rules the world, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang seems to be giving up. Well, I don't think that's true. I think that's, as I stated there, it's in his best interest for this kind of race to continue. But we have this as well. Trump admin says it's not bailing out the AI industry regardless of how hard it crashes. Well, that remains to be seen. Given what happened during the global financial crisis in the housing market, I think, they say stuff like this, but if it does get really bad, of course, they're going to bail it out. When banks, especially if banks are involved, we saw Silicon Valley Bank, so that minor banking crisis a while ago, where they rushed in to guarantee deposits, and there were Silicon Valley companies, and David Sachs, who this is here, who's now the AI czar in the White House, and he was crying for a bailout immediately. All those guys on the All In podcast were doing that, and they got it. During the Wall Street Journal's Tech Live conference on Wednesday, OpenAI Chief Financial Officer Sarah Friar hinted at the possibility that the government could backstop the guarantee that allows the financing to happen as the AI industry continues to take even more debt. Friar regretted her comment almost immediately, clarifying in a subsequent post on LinkedIn that OpenAI is not seeking a government backstop for our future commitments. Well, as I said, all bets are off. If it starts hurting the macro, the US economy, I mean, of course, they're going to bail it out. It's a classic. It's happened before. It's likely would happen again if things got really bad, right? Correct me if I'm wrong there. but it's like the libertarians say, don't mess with it. And that's what David Sachs, I think he's kind of a libertarian, or these guys are pseudo libertarians. I mean, they'll get a bailout if they can get it. Elon Musk getting a lot of government money for Tesla and his other companies. And this genius exec says there are only two possibilities for AI. It'll collapse the economy or make everyone's job obsolete. And so this is what people are concerned about, right? We get either of these two things, that if there's a big bust, could crash the economy. But if it works out the way they're saying and it accelerates and does well, it will take a lot of jobs very quickly. And so the job losses that are happening at the moment, and there are some, so it's questionable whether that is to do with government policy, Trump administration policy, with tariffs and all that impacting it, or whether it's to do with AI and automation. Perhaps some of both, I don't know. But I've heard of a lot of companies trying to get AI to take over jobs, and I've seen some videos of people saying that they've actually lost their job because of AI already. And we have here, Musk will get richer, people will get unemployed. Nobel laureate Hinton on AI. So this is the guy who's called the godfather of AI, labeled that. I mean, the CEO of NVIDIA has been labeled that by some analysts, but this guy, he was warning of the dangers of AI. And, he's basically saying here that it'll be beneficial for Musk, and Musk is talking about this utopia, but everybody else won't be okay. He's a bit of a doomer when it comes to AI in the long term, that it will become super intelligent and we don't know what will happen. So I won't get into that argument. And we have here Elon Musk himself. So I've said here, this is a tragic state of affairs for the richest man in the world and every guy who idolizes him. So he's posted this for Grok, his company XAI, working on Grok. Grok, imagine prompt. She smiles and says, I will always love you. Let's look at this. So this is tragic. This is the richest man in the world, sort of encouraging AI girlfriends, say, who will always love you. I mean, it's a pretty sad state of affairs, right? Listen to this.
And I will always love you.
This is what he's doing with AI. So we were promised the cures for cancer, and instead we got this kind of stuff. And so on that, we have a woman on the X platform here who says, I block like 10 men a day. There's just an unimaginable number of gross, mean men on here just spewing negativity at me and other women. And so women just definitely feel uncomfortable on there. And so is Elon proud of himself that this is the culture on X? It's a bit of a side issue, but definitely related to AI. All right, bit of a long one today, but I did want to go through all that, and I said this could turn into a series. So do let me know what you think of that in the comments. Any of that? Do you think that we're in an AI bubble? Do you think any of those main players, those major players said about it? Which side do you fall on about where we're at the moment? Do let me know on YouTube comments and on Spotify comments. This is kind of what's happening. I'm pleased to see this. I can't complain about this, what's happening over there. I don't know what they're doing to the algorithm for videos, but it's definitely working out for me in the moment. So do join over there. If you're regular over there, do follow over there too. There's comments over there now. They're making some changes over there. I use that. They do have video over there if you don't know, but I'm keen to kind of equal it out, get many more views on YouTube, but it's definitely going well over there. So do join over there. Don't forget, I just wanted to mention that. And the Johnston Lounge. This has been a long video, but if you're still here, you may be interested in this. People said, why have you changed the name? And this video is kind of more in the art of value territory, but I'm diversifying into different subjects, different topics. So I wanted a name where I could do that. I wanted to be more relaxed. Now, of course, I thought of the Johnston show. And if you look at the podcast charts and all that, there's a lot of so-and-so show, whatever, but I don't know. I just didn't like show. It's like, am I singing? Am I dancing? Is it something like that? So the lounge is more relaxed. We're in the lounge here. I might do a few more casual videos on different subjects. I might interview people later. Gives me more scope to expand if I'm going to do that for 5-10 years or more. But I think this will suit anyway. That's where I'm at. So if you want to follow, if you're not subscribed yet, do subscribe. And I'm going to put a related video on screen underneath me here. Do go and see that now if you want to. and also a subscribe link if you're watching on Spotify. Do follow if you're not already. And thanks for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one on the Johnston Lounge.